Welcome to the September 21st, 2023 meeting of the Board of Directors of the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Director McCarthy Olmsted. Here. Director Martian.
Here.
Director Sloan. Director Kennedy.
Here.
Director Cerna.
Here.
Director Jennings.
Here.
Director Kaplan. Director Talamentes. Director Holloway.
Present.
Director Shaw. Director Barandis. Director Baines.
Here.
Director Conant. We do have a 7-member quorum.
Thank you. And normally I would ask the clerk to read the announcements, but in this case I will say, please recite the announcements.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting of SAFCA is being broadcast live and will be cablecast on metro14live.saccounty.gov and also on SAFCA's website within 48 hours after the meeting. Members of the audience who wish to address the board, please identify yourself for the record and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to items not on the agenda for public comment, and we do have a speaker slip from Joseph Piriello. Welcome, sir.
Yes, my name is Joseph Piriello, and I would like to start off by saying thank you. We just yesterday received a message from SAFCA addressing one of our issues that we previously talked about, the access off of Levy Road to our property. We haven't had time to talk about this with our lawyer yet, but we do appreciate the communication. However, it's been 5 months since we first addressed this when we came in April, and then we returned in June to provide drawings on what our confusion is for the amount of land that's being taken. From the materials that we've been provided from SAFCA and what we think is the amount that should be taken is far less than the amount that is being taken based on the actual take. We'd just like to have a conversation with SAFCA about this and figure out what's driving the differences. And if we could pursue alternatives to a simple fee acquisition that can meet SAFCA's goals. For us, it's not about the money, it's about keeping our land, right? And if this conversation can't happen and the take is a predetermined result because of the plans being essentially finalized, which is what we've been told, I don't know how to move forward, okay? And that's all I'm asking. I just want to have this conversation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down. I appreciate it. Next item, please.
Next item is information, history of how 2 projects ended up so different and the resulting impact on real estate requirements.
It's a very intriguing title.
Well, good afternoon, Rick Johnson. So I was thinking about it because a lot of the discussions that we've been having about the real estate needs go all the way back to the original project authorizations. And as I was thinking about it, the Natomas, when the federal government held their Civil Works Review Board, it was September of 2010, and if I counted right, Brian was the only board member on the board that is still on our board at this time. And then the authorization came in 2014, and I think Brian and Phil were the only 2 board members at that time on the board. So a lot of the history as to what the conditions were of us moving forward have kind of got lost. And then on Common Features 2016, we had 5 board members that are still on the board. So I just wanted to review those a little bit. I think it might help understand why some of these things are what's being asked for us. But real quick, so Natoma is very controversial. At the federal level, there was a lot of opposition within the Corps of Engineers itself, within the Assistant Secretary of the Army's office. There was a lot of opposition in OMB, which is the funding arm of the government, and then others. There were two major issues there. One was there's an executive order that says no federal dollars can be used that would promote development in a floodplain. And then the second one, which is really the bigger discussion, was why should the federal government put this much money into fixing the levees around the Thomas? It will just lead to development, which will put more people in the deep floodplain. And then if there's a levee failure or future flooding, more federal responsibility and liability. So those were the big issues that had to be discussed. So on the executive order, the way that we finally worked a way around that one is, again, it was an executive order from back in 1977 under President Carter, but it's still in effect today. It says that the federal government cannot take actions or spend funding that will lead to development in a floodplain. So the way that was worked out is the core project that was authorized by Congress, the components of it only provide less than 100-year level protection, a 67-year level of protection. Anything beyond that was the responsibility of the non-federal sponsors. So the features that had to be constructed to get us to 100-year or to the 200-year were at our costs there. So that was the way we worked around the executive order. Now, the other question was taken up by a number of entities. One was the Association of State Floodplain Managers. They're about a 7,000 strong group that deals with national policy on things like flood insurance and other flood policies that affect the Corps and FEMA. They decided to use Natomas as an example of how not to do projects, and they decided to use it as a case study. So basically, what they were saying is that if we build this project, ultimately there will be development in there. Without a doubt, someday there'll be a levee failure and there'll be a disaster. And so that was a message they were trying to get to the administration and Congress at the time. So on September of 2010, had the Civil Works Review Board, and that's when the decision's made whether or not they're going to support sending a project forward to Congress for authorization. We had over 60 people in the room and over 100 across the nation on there. Most of the discussion was, will this project allow more development in deep floodplain, put more people at risk, thus increasing federal exposure, and is it the right thing to do? So I won't go into all the details, but the folks that were opposed to it presented their side. We presented all the things that, reasons why we needed to do it. I mean, we had 100,000 people living in the basin already. But what really won them over were the actions that we're taking to continue to drive down the risk, and the development impact fee was the thing that seemed to push it over for us. But they did put conditions on the approval, and that was that the levees out there be built to all the current standards, not only for just the design and levee work, but for maintaining and operating in the future. So this included their engineering technical letter, which required access at the toe of the levees and vegetation and encroachment-free zones on the land side and water side. So the exact requirements vary around the basin, depending, the soils vary and the conditions underneath the levees vary quite a bit. But pretty much, we ended up building new adjacent levees. Seepage berms were needed, and then widening existing levees and pretty much replacing or completely rebuilding the existing levees. So all these conditions were in the project that Congress authorized, including those O&M access at the toe of the levee, and then the land side and water side encroachment and vegetation zones there. So Jumping over to Common Features 2016, it was a completely different story. That had a lot of support because they didn't see it as really creating a lot of new development, but it was existing hundreds of thousands of people in an existing high-risk deep floodplain. That's why it got authorized and funded much quicker. But as we were going in the study, there were a lot of situations that caused problems there. And led to a much different project than what we're building in Natomas. And so just walk through those real quick. One was the development in the pocket area. If you look, this is just looking down on it. You can see there's no room on the water side of the levees to do anything. And the fence lines are just right at the toe of the levee. So really restricted area there. As far as being able to do anything like we're doing in Natomas. The other one, too, is as we were going through this, we found that the state of California actually had a flood control easement in the pocket along much of the levees there, a minimum of a 10-foot easement. And it was there to provide access at the toe of the levee, but the state never built an access road on it. So what we found out over the years, many people incorporated it into their backyards. And in some cases like this one, you can see those structures in that pool are actually built on the state flood control easement, as were many other structures, and some cases even with actual permits. So that's created a bit of a problem. Looking down on this, you can see again, this is the same picture, but that fence line is along the toe of the levee. The state easement is actually to the house land side, so towards the houses. So you can see the number of pools and structures just in that one that are in the easement there. In addition, in the pocket area, a lot of folks had incorporated part of the levee itself into their backyard, had put landscaping and other structures on it, which we had to clear ahead of the construction. And so that's what led to SAVCA developing the encroachment incentive removal program to let us get ahead of the construction. For the 4 contracts so far, we've removed about 220 encroachments, about $1.8 million there. We do have issue with construction claims. Unfortunately, with that tight area there, it's difficult for that equipment to work without causing some problems to the adjacent property owners. And the conditions of the soils out there seem to aggravate the vibrations and some of the other things. So to date, we've had about 35 claims at about $1.5 million, and there's still some pending there. So, but this was really the biggest issue out in the pocket area, is the Corps looked at, when they started the study, they wanted to build the levees up to the absolute latest standards like we were doing in Natomas. So to do that, in some areas where we would need a seepage permit and an adjacent levee, we were talking 5 or 6 rows of houses. And over a decade ago, they were valuing that at $6 billion. So that was just not implementable to take thousands of homes. So the Corps looked at a scaled down version where they would just take 1 row of homes right adjacent to the levees to allow for a new adjacent levee. Even that one, we were talking 500 units and more, and $1.5 to $3 billion. So the problem with that then soon became obvious that we weren't going to be able to build the same type of levee that we were doing around Natomas in the pocket area. So how could we go ahead and advance the risk given the Corps wanting to get the latest standards? So Congressman Matsui in 2013 had Assistant Secretary of the Army headquarters come out. We walked the pocket area, and the issue that we were talking about is, okay, how can we reduce the flood risk within the constraints that we have here and still meet all your requirements? So the Corps actually came up with a solution. They called it a system-wide improvement framework. And so the non-federal sponsors and the levee maintaining agencies put together what they call a SWIFT that laid out how over time we would create access or visibility at the toilet level and then at the levees, and then also vegetation encroachment removal. So in exchange for that, the Corps said they're going to take the existing footprint and do everything that they physically can in that footprint to improve the levees to the best they can. So part of what SAFCA did, we put into the CC82 assessment was $67.5 million to do this levee, what we're calling levee modernization program in response to that SWIFT, and also to meet the requirements to do the FEMA accreditation and the state accreditation. We have about 30 years to do that. A couple of examples, this was in the pocket area. This house was actually encroached into the levee. So part of our program was we took it out and had to remove it. Another example, this house came up for sale, willing seller. The pool and structure were in the state easement. So we purchased it, filled in the pool, because the pools against the toilet levee really aggravate the seepage problem. We filled it in and then moved the fence to the easement line. And as soon as construction's done in that reach, then we'll surplus that and put it back out for sale. So this is the way we're going to, over time, meet those requirements. So I wanted to kind of show you visibly the difference that we ended up with there. This one here, it shows at the top is a pocket levee cross-section. The bottom is a Natomas one where we had a berm. It's a little hard to see there, so I'm just going to go to the next slide. This one, I hit it in red. That was the pocket. This is blue, and then I put them on top of each other. So we can see, because we were constrained by development there, we did everything we could within the existing footprint, but we were able to have a much more robust levee out in the Natomas area there. And just a few of the features, like we couldn't put an access road at the toe in the pocket. We couldn't put a new adjacent levee. We had to refix the old one, things like that. But that's kind of the difference, but it also drove some of the requirements for real estate there. I have been asked a lot, so we're doing all this work. Are we going to have to come back and do it again? And the way I answer that is, just like with fire codes and seismic codes, every time there's a disaster, they'll go in and look to see what could we have done differently to prevent some of this, and standards will change, or the codes will change. And the same thing has and will continue to happen with flood events. There's one thing that's really probably my number one worry right now, and I'll use this to explain it. This is peak flows on the American River. You've probably all seen this before. That red line in the mid-50s is when Folsom Dam was built and the levees were completed. At the time, based on the period of record that we didn't start keeping until early 1900s, we thought we had a 500-year level of protection. Look at all the flows that have occurred larger than what it was designed for since. So now the Corps, its level of protection is below 100-year, actually more like 70 in most places. And so what worries me is, as we see, this is just a study that was done recently, the megastorm study by USGS, that is suggesting that as the climate warms up, that the frequency of the large events is going to increase. So they're suggesting in California, a current storm that we give a frequency of 100-year will be a 50-year storm soon. And so what's going to happen over time, I'm afraid, is if we get a lot of these bigger storm events, they'll have to redo the hydrology, and what we thought was a 100-year won't be anymore. What we thought was a 200-year won't be anymore. And so we may have to go back in and do some work at some point to address some of these things. Now, we're building well above 200 years, so I think we'll have some time. But at some point, if we do have to go back in on the levees, we're okay in Natomas, because in most places we do have room, but we pretty well maxed out what we can do in the pocket area, so that one could become a problem. So I wanted to focus on this one for just a second, how this impacts real estate. 2007, the Corps came out and said Natomas had about a 30-year level protection, which for 100,000 people just was not reasonable. So we worked with the state of California, SAFCA did, and took on early implementation of the project while the Corps did its studies to go get congressional authorization. We were able to get $420 million worth of construction in with the help from the state. They agreed to pay 70% of it, but one of the conditions for getting that funding was we would not buy easements. We were going to buy fee title. They did not want to go through what they did in the pocket area. They've got other areas of California too where they have flood easements that have been built upon. So their feeling is fee title is much easier to protect against encroachment. Then similarly, when the federal project got authorized and we had to come up with 35% non-federal cost share, the state again is paying 70%, but again asked for fee title. So I've mentioned this before, for the parts of Natomas that we're getting right now, the state was actually supposed to be getting that real estate. When we start these projects, we divvied up the different agencies that were going to get which parts. They did the appraisals. They've been doing the work along the east side of the levee. They told the Corps they weren't going to meet their schedule, which would push us to not meet the 2025 deadline. So that's when we jumped in, said we would work with the property owners and see if we couldn't get that back on track there. The reason I bring that up is we really don't have the option of changing the footprint or changing fee to easement. If we're not able to get what's being asked for, then we've got to turn it back over to the state and let them pursue it. So, and it's for all these reasons that we've made those agreements in our cost share agreement there. And then similarly, RD 1000 also, when we started this, requested we get in fee title for all the same reasons. I did want, finally, this is my last slide. Jason pulled this together for me. So even though we got all those real estate requirements around the basin, the LERG cost, which is not only the real estate but also the relocations and everything else, actually turn out to be about half per mile around the Natomas Basin than they are in the pocket area, just because of all the costs of dealing with all the encroachments there. And then, so basically in Natomas, we're getting a much more robust system for about half the LERG cost per mile. So it just wanted to share all that, kind of give some of the reasons why the two projects are so different and some of the things that went into reaching that point. So I'll see if there's any questions.
Any questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Jennings.
Just from the standpoint of communication to the constituents, what's our process for letting them know this presentation that you've made tonight?
Well, I mean, it's available. We have it online here, but as far as, I mean, we could come out and meet with anyone in particular if they wanted to, or Lindy will have it posted online, both the video and the slides, if they want to be used there.
Yeah, we can talk about that from the standpoint of the differences between the two and also the potential impact of having to come back at a later time.
Right. The impact of coming back is going to be huge in a pocket area. So, yeah.
So we'll work with you on making that happen.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Director Baines.
Thank you. This is good information for me. It's the first time I've seen a lot of it. The question is, in Natomas, on the Natomas levee system, there is different real estate requirements going from reach H to reach G, and I understand it's an engineering design thing, but what, again, drove that requirement or design requirement?
Yeah, so I mean, well, part of the thing there is down in reach H, you got, we don't have as much room at the toe of the levee, so it's similar to the problems in the pocket area. It's harder to make sure nothing's there that's going to increase the seepage. And so putting in At one point, and I haven't checked the latest contracts, but at one point it was running about 25 to 35 million a mile to put in these deep slurry walls. So as we go up on the east side, the Corps doesn't have to put slurry walls in there if we ensure there's no encroachments in adjacent to the levee. So down where we couldn't get as much adjacent to the levee, we had to do the more expensive fix. Up here higher, we can, that's part of the design. So that's when we get so far along in the design process, if we change the real estate footprint, they'll have to change the design.
Thank you.
Director Cerna.
Rick, several times during your presentation, you referenced in the pocket that homeowners with property immediately adjacent to the toe of the levee either constructed things like pools or accessory buildings with permits and without. For those that did receive permits from the city of Sacramento, what liability does the city have relative to issuing those permits? I mean, I assume building departments, before they issue permits, are expected to know where easements are.
Yeah, right. And we've discussed about that question some too, and it's hard for the property owners. What we found is sometimes the title companies, even though the easements were on the subdivision maps, they didn't always show them on each individual map. So sometimes I'm not sure the property owners even knew they might have had an easement, and therefore when they put the plans in, if the city didn't check, they might not have picked it up either there.
Well, it's this, if the city didn't check part that concerns me and should concern anyone. But what about liability?
So, I mean, we'll have to talk that through our modernization program. I mean, part of what we're doing is going into willing sellers as the houses come up, purchase them, setting the property back, and then filling it in. That's probably not going to take all of them. So that's one of the conversations we're going to need to have with the city, is how ultimately they're going to get that easement cleared out.
Okay.
We've got about 30 years to address it, but we do need to.
So there's a statute of limitations on it?
The way that actually was more tied to the urban levee design requirements than to the core SWIFT. I don't believe the SWIFT had a timeline in there. So.
Okay, I'm not sure I completely understand the response, but
Yeah.
It just seems to me that if I'm a property owner and I want to build a swimming pool and to go get a permit from the city, I expect, or any jurisdiction, right? Not just this example, but any jurisdiction, I expect that their building department or the agency that's issuing any kind of permit is doing so legally unto themselves, and not avoiding or being ignorant of easements. I mean,
Right.
it seems like a pretty elementary exercise to go through to check a map, I guess is what I'm saying.
And I think both the city and county now have process in place to double check with the flood agencies now before they do it. So I think things are in place now to avoid that occurring in the future.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Just real quickly before I go to Director Talamantes to follow up on Director Cerna's question, that would also apply to permits that were awarded or issued by the Central Valley Flood Protection
Right.
Board. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Director Talamantes.
Thank you so much for your thorough presentation. You know, as a new board member to SAFCA, having the full context of everything is really important to me. So thank you. And to piggyback off of Director Jennings' question, you know, a lot of residents don't have time to watch 45 minutes of a presentation to find this information, and it can be complicated. So my ask to staff is if you can help us create like a one-pager of information that we can distribute in our newsletters to give people a heads up on where we're at on levee protections and activity in the Natomas area and in the pocket.
Yeah,
That'd be wonderful for us just to share that information.
Sure, gladly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate it. That takes us to closed session, so we will now, which room are we in?
Hearing room 2.
Hearing room 2. We will recess to closed session.
We'll come back here, right?
Yes. Call the meeting back to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Director McCarthy Olmsted. Here. Director Martian.
Here.
Director Sloan. Here. Chairman Kennedy.
Here.
Director Cerna.
Here.
Director Jennings.
Here.
Director Kaplan. Director Talamentes.
Here.
Vice Chairman Holloway.
Aye. Here.
Director Shaw. Director Avdis. Director Baines.
Here.
and Director Conant. We have a 9-member quorum.
Thank you.
And our first item is a separate matter, is public hearing resolution of necessity number 106, authorizing an eminent domain action to condemn certain real property interests for the Reach F component of Phase 4B of the Natomas Levee Improvement Project. Fee interest, a permanent electrical and communications facility easement, and a temporary construction easement acquisition over portions of Sacramento County Assessor's Parcel Number 2010051-001, property at 9149 East Levee Road. Property owner is 9140 East Levee Road, LLC.
Okay, and I promise I won't make you read that again. And Mr. DeGroote, if you'll kind of hang out for a while, but apparently our clerk wants to go home early. So we have consent matters before that.
Oh.
Are there any matters on the consent calendar that anybody on the board would like to pull or discuss or have questions about?
Move consent.
Motion by Director Holloway.
Second.
Okay, is there any member of the
Director
public that would like to
Talman,
comment at this time on any item on the consent calendar? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director McCarthy Olmsted. Aye. Director Martian.
Aye.
Director Sloan. Aye. Chairman Kennedy.
Aye.
Director Cerna.
Aye.
Director Jennings.
Yes.
Director Kaplan. Director Talamentes.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Holloway.
Aye.
Director Shaw. Director Avdis. Director Baines.
Aye.
Director Conant. Motion passes with 9-member approval.
And before we get to separate matters, we took care of the consent, but council will give you an opportunity. Is there anything to report out of closed session?
Thank you. Nothing to report at this time.
Thank you. Next item. And you don't have to read the next item. We will consider that read into the record.
Chairman Kennedy, I would also like to include item 10 with number 9. We'll take both of those at the same time.
Okay.
So I'd just like to read that.
Please do.
APN number 35280-013, property at 8569 Natomas Road, property owner 9149 East Levee Road, LLC.
Thank you. Mr. DeGroote?
Good afternoon, directors. Matt DeGroote, Real Estate Program Manager with Safeco. So, as Lindy mentioned, there are 2 separate actions with this presentation, and they're under the same ownership group, but just different legal entities. So, the properties are located at, both the properties mentioned are located on the land side of the Natomas East Main Drainage Canal, West Levee, in the Natomas Basin area of Sacramento and Sutter counties, and acquisition of the properties are required for the NEMDEC West Levee Reach F component of the project. So here's attachment A, which is the improvement reaches of the project, and we are in Reach F. This attachment is a cross-section of the 9140 East Levee LLC property, and this shows the levee improvements that are planned at this location, which include widening of the levee, flattening of the landside levee slope, construction of a seepage and stability berm, construction of an operation and maintenance road at the landside toe of the levee, and relocation of conflicting utility infrastructure, and the establishment of a flood control works protection zone. And again, since this is two separate properties, here is the cross-section of the adjacent property, which again is, this one is located at 8569 Natomas Road and is the 9149 East Levy Road LLC. And the construction activities of this location are, again, widening of the levee and flattening of the landside levee slope, construction of a seepage and stability berm, construction of an operation and maintenance road at the landside toe of the levee, relocation of conflicting utility infrastructure, and establishment of a flood control works protection zone. Attachment sheet C shows the location of both of the properties, one in Sutter County and one in Sacramento County. You can see them right there. And on this attachment, we have the proposed take areas. So the proposed fee take areas in red, with the temporary construction easement shown in blue and utility easement shown in orange. So the fee interests proposed are to construct the levee improvements, to ensure that no encroachments or excavations undermine the integrity of the levee improvements, and allow for proper operation and maintenance of the flood control features to take place. The permanent electrical and communication facilities easement is needed to relocate the existing utilities out of the footprint of the levee improvements, and the temporary construction easements are required for the installation of fencing and driveway improvements. So attachments E through E3 of the staff reports for these are the project description and necessity for the acquisitions, environmental compliance documents and considerations, and additional design analysis for the relocated irrigation and drainage canals. On March 7th of 2022, Safeco sent letters to the property owners advising them that the upcoming levee improvement project will affect their property. On June 28th of 2022, Safeco sent letters to the property owners advising them that an appraisal was being prepared to acquire portions of their property and fee, as well as an electrical and communication facility easement. On January 26th of 2023, Safeco provided formal offers to purchase the property rights, which consisted of the fee interests and the permanent electrical and communication facility easement and temporary rights that were required to install the fencing and the driveways. On April 26th of 23, Safeco sent letters to the owners that clarified the initial offers that described the temporary rights that are required as temporary construction easements and then set a value for those. Attachment J is a diary of the discussions between Safeco's right-of-way acquisition consultant and the owners. And on September 1st of 2023, Safeco did mail written notices to the owners of the properties, advising them that this board would hold a hearing today at this time to consider the adoption of resolutions of necessity to acquire the property rights by eminent domain. So this slide just shows the exhibits that will be attached to each resolution. So for these particular properties, we've had good interaction with the local on-site facilities manager, and we've met with them several times on site, and there seems to be a consensus with those local representatives that the relocations needed can occur and that the business can still function afterward. However, the owner of the properties is in New York, and communication with the owner has been inconsistent. So the on-site facilities manager doesn't have the authority to move forward with any agreements with us. So it's for that reason that staff is requesting that the board consider these resolutions today so we can continue to move forward with the acquisition process. And as just a reminder, there are 2 requests as part of this.
Thank you. Before we open the public hearing, is there any member of the board that has any questions, staff, at this time? Hearing none, I will open the public hearing. At this time, is there any member of the public that would like to address the board on either of these issues or both? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. It's the will of the board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff recommendation. Please call the roll. Or I'm sorry. Yes. No, I can do a vote. We can call the roll, but it's not necessary because we don't have anybody online. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Next item, please.
Thank you. Item 11 is a public hearing resolution of necessity number 2023108. I'm sorry. Continued from the August 17th, 2023 Board of Directors meeting, authorizing an eminent domain action to condemn certain real property interests for the Reach F component of Phase 4B of the Natomas Levee Improvement Project. Fee interest, a permanent electrical and communication facilities easement, and a temporary construction easement acquisition over portions of Sacramento County APN 201-1010-017, property at 8757 East Levee Road in Alberta, California. Property owner DeWitt Farms LLC. This item does require a 9-member vote to pass the resolution.
Matt Regret again, Real Estate Program Manager of Safeco. Good news on this one. We have reached an agreement with the property owner, and we request that this item be dropped from the agenda.
All right. Any questions from the board? Okay, any member of the public have any questions on this? All right, then I will move that it be dropped from the agenda. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Next item, please.
Thank you. Item 12, public hearing resolution of necessity number 2023109, continued from the August 17th, 2023 Board of Directors meeting, authorizing an eminent domain action to condemn certain real property interests for the Reach F component of Phase 4B of the Natomas Levee Improvement Project. Fee interest, a permanent electrical and communication facilities easement, and a temporary construction easement acquisition over portions of Sutter County APN 35170-044, property at 7145 Natomas Road, Alberta, California. Property owned by Mark C. Stevenson and Raquel A. Stevenson as co-trustees of the Stevenson Family Trust, dated November 7th, 2005. This item also requires a 9-member vote to pass resolution.
Mr. DeGroat.
Good afternoon again, Directors. Matt Regret. So the property that was mentioned is located on the land side of the Natomas East Main Drainage Canal, West Levee, in the Natomas Basin area of Sutter County. An acquisition of the property is required for the NIMDEC West Levee Reach F component of the project. Again, here is Reach A, or Attachment A shows the reaches of the Natomas Levee Improvement Project, and we are in Reach F again. Attachment B shows, it's a cross-section sketch that shows the improvements that are going to take place at this portion of the project, which include widening of the top of the levee and flattening the landside levee slope, construction of a seepage berm, seepage and stability berm, construction of an operation and maintenance road at the landside toe of the levee, relocation of conflicting utility infrastructure, and the establishment of a flood control protection work zone. Attachment C is, shows the location of the property within the project reaches, right there. And on this exhibit, we see the proposed acquisitions. Again, the red is in fee. The fee acquisition is in red. Temporary construction easement is in blue, and the utility easement is in orange. So again, the fee is needed to construct the levee improvements to ensure that no encroachments or excavations undermine the integrity of the levee improvements, and to allow for the proper operation and maintenance of the flood control features to take place. The permanent electrical and communication facilities easement is needed to relocate the existing utilities out of the footprint of the levee improvements. And the temporary construction easements are required for the installation of fencing and driveway improvements. Attachments E3-3 of the staff report are the project description and necessity for the acquisition, environmental compliance documents and considerations, and additional design analysis that was done. On March 7th of 2022, Safeco sent a letter to the property owners advising them that the upcoming project will affect their property. On June 28th of 2022, Safeco sent letters on June 20th and then updated on August 26th of 2022. Safeco sent letters to the property owners advising them that Safeco was preparing an appraisal to acquire a portion of their property and fee, as well as electrical and communication facilities easement and temporary rights for construction staging. On November 3rd of 2022, Safeco provided a formal offer to purchase the property rights that were just mentioned, and additionally included temporary rights that are required for the installation of fencing and driveway improvements. On May 23rd of 2023, Safeco sent a letter to the owners that clarified the initial offer, which described those temporary rights required for the installation of the fencing as a temporary construction easement and set a value for that. And additionally, per the owner's request, the removal of the previously included temporary construction staging area. On August 1st of 2023, Safeco mailed a written notice to the owners advising them that this board would hold a hearing on August 17th of 2023 to consider the adoption of a resolution of necessity to acquire those rights by eminent domain. At the August 17th board meeting, this board continued the hearing on the resolution of necessity to its September 21st meeting today to allow for further negotiations to take place. Attachment L is a diary of the discussions between Safeco's right-of-way acquisition consultant and the owners. And on September 1st of 2023, Safeco did mail a written notice to the owners, advising them that this board would hold a meeting today at this time to consider the adoption of a resolution of necessity to acquire the rights by eminent domain. And again, this slide just shows the exhibits that are going to be attached to the proposed resolution. So with this particular acquisition, we've had fairly decent communication with the property owners. However, when it's come down to the details of the agreements for the acquisition, we have not been able to come to an agreement. And one of the most recent communications, the property owner basically said that perhaps your counsel should just talk to my attorney and we can handle it that way. So in order to maintain the project schedule and keep on track and meet our obligations to the Corps, those conversations will obviously continue to take place, but in order for the project schedule to remain on track, that is why we're here today requesting that this board consider this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? None, then I will open up the public hearing. And are there at this time, is there any member of the public that would like to address the board on this item? Hearing and seeing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I'll move it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Next item.
Item number 13, public hearing, resolution of necessity number 2023110, continued from the June 15th, 2023 Board of Directors meeting, authorizing an eminent domain action to condemn certain real property interests for the REACH G component of Phase 4B of the Natomas Levee Improvement Project, fee interest, a permanent electrical and communication facilities easement, and a temporary construction easement acquisition over portions of Sacramento County, APN number 201-0190-007, property located at 7851 East Levee Road, Alberta, California. Property owner Richard L. Driggs as trustee of the Driggs Trust. This item also requires 9-member vote to pass resolution.
Mr. DeGroat.
Good afternoon again, Directors. Matt DeGroat. Good news as well on this one. We have reached a settlement with the property owners and request that this item be dropped from the agenda.
Okay, move to drop. Is there a second? Second. Is there anyone like to comment on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Next item.
Item number 14 is a public hearing, resolution of necessity number 2023111, authorizing an eminent domain action to condemn certain real property interests for the Reach G component of Phase 4B of the Natomas Levee Improvement Project, fee interest and temporary construction easement acquisition over portions of Sacramento County APNs 201, 0320, 018, and 019, property located at 5921 East Levee Road, Sacramento, California. Property owner, Twin Rivers Unified School District.
Mr. DeGroat.
Afternoon again, directors. On this particular item, staff recommends that this be continued for 3 months until the November board meeting to allow for additional time for negotiation.
Are there any questions, Mr. DeGroat, at this time?
Oh,
It'd be 2 months if it was November.
Correct.
Okay.
forgive me, 2 additional months.
Yeah, you're a real estate guy, not a math guy. Okay, is there any member of the public that'd like to address the board on this before we vote? No, okay, then the chair will move to continue for 2 months. Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. DeGroat. Well done.
Thank you.
And with that, Mr. Johnson, your executive director's report is received and filed this month? Okay, thank you very much. Then we are adjourned. Our next meeting is October 19th.